Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for yet again another session of our education series. My name is Jared Hackbart. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing at Brilliance. And with me, I have Lori McDonald, President and CEO.
Yes, hello. I am very excited to be here this week. A little bit about myself and Brilliance. I started Brilliance a little more than 20 years ago. I went to Purdue in computer electrical engineering and ended up through an internship working at NASA Johnson Space Center, where I eventually worked as a flight controller for the space shuttle program. So a really fun opportunity. I eventually met my husband there. He also was an engineering student and a flight controller at NASA. And eventually we ended up relocating to Milwaukee, Wisconsin through a job promotion he had with Rockwell Automation. And I was trying to figure out what could be as cool as space. And I decided to start a web development company. And my husband managed the largest data warehouse at Rockwell and worked with a lot of manufacturers and distributors. And as a result, we ended up organizationally focusing on working with manufacturers and distributors, helping them to implement e-commerce. And so that's been a really fun journey. We've grown quite a bit over the last 20 plus years. And a part of that journey has been the opportunity to work with John Harsh from Gesswein. And John, I think we started working together in 2015. John's now a member of our customer advisory board and has really great experiences from his career as a whole, and also specific to Gesswein and their journey through software selection, both for ERP and e-commerce. And I'm really excited about what you're going to share with us today. John, I'm going to pass it to you to let you introduce yourself.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me. It's certainly a lot of fun. And just one more thing that Brilliance has helped Gesswein accomplish over the years here. So again, thanks to you and all the team. I am the Chief Operating Officer at Gesswein, and we're over 100-year-old fourth-generation family business. We're specialty distributors in both the jewelry industry and the small metal parts industry. My background, I'm an engineer from the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, so I'm up against some Badgers and some folks from Purdue as a Wolverine here in this organization. Makes it a little fun. And I have an MBA from Rensselaer Polytechnic. Early in my career, I actually worked on as a manufacturing systems analyst on back then ERP systems and MRP systems first, and then continued to use them through the years. And as I worked in the general management, just got out of necessity familiar with things that were happening. Pretty much e-commerce was my first exposure was at Gesswein, and which started out as pretty basic, but with the help of the Brilliance folks, it's now grown to over 20% of our business. We've got some challenges ahead as we get ready to move forward with our company, and we'll just be happy to talk about those and see what you guys have to say.
Well, we're looking forward. It's going to be a great conversation. John, you guys are going through some change here at Gesswein. You're doing some reviews. So what led you to deciding it was time to perform a review of your ERP and e-commerce solution?
Well, it's kind of out of necessity. We are currently operating on a legacy ERP system that I think we've had for at least 25 years and didn't even really upgrade much. When I got here in 2013, things were so old. We still had an AS400. We ended up jumping from the version 3 of that software to version 8, which was practically the same as going to a new ERP. So that's where our journey to the future began. Well, now here we are 5, 6, 7 years later, and both our version and our server are out of support. We're paying extra money for the continued support for that. So based on that, it's just the likely time to move on and find something that's more modern, more competitive, more efficient for our business, is to get us set up for some growth in the future. We originally thought maybe we would postpone this when the COVID incident came along, but then we realized that maybe it's a good opportunity to take a little bit of this downtime and go forward. And I think we're glad we did. It's getting busier now, so it's getting to be a little more of a challenge to do both. That's where we are. We had some objectives because with the current system that we're running, we've kind of referred to it as a hairball because of the age and the lack of capabilities of the old ERP system. We have a shipping system that's added on. We have a report writing system. We have a CRM system that's added on. We have a electronic document storage and retrieval that's stacked on, and there's a few other things stacked on there. And not only do you have to maintain them and get them to work together, but they all have annual support fees also. So we're just hoping that between the efficiencies and the capabilities of something new that we're going to really get some big benefits.
When you talk about identifying the need to move to new systems, you're really talking about managing change in that process. And you've managed change in a number of settings. This certainly isn't the first time that's been true. That you've been a part of leading organizational change. And I'm just curious, John, like from your perspective, how you go about that. From my perspective, you do it very well. So I'd love what tips you have for the rest of us in terms of leading an organization through that kind of change.
Sure. Well, I have the benefit of being from Generation Dinosaur. So I've been around a while and I've made some mistakes and didn't always necessarily go well, but you try to learn from them. Obviously, this can't be done in a vacuum. And in this project and others, very careful to get a broad team of people from each business function, get them involved, get them feeling like they're part of the process, so that they buy into it. Because the worst thing you can do is sit in a room by yourself and try to show people what they need. And even if it did work, the resentment is just usually huge, and it's an uphill battle to get them to buy in and make the change. So I think working as a team with good management is really key.
I love the fact that I've seen as you approach this, the way you involve your entire team in the process and create that cross-functional team with a broad group in it. So really a wise approach.
Yeah, we saw a little bit of that. Oops, sorry. We saw a little bit of that when we upgraded, that people didn't feel like maybe we went to the right system. Maybe we should have done something different. So I got early warning on that. Sorry, Jared.
No, that's great. Do not apologize. Cut me off at any point in time. Often when we're working with organizations, they come to us that they've run into some roadblocks through this process. Did you specifically encounter any hurdles as you've been going through your review?
Yeah, I mean everybody has hurdles. None the least of which is time now, because we all have our day jobs. But we were pretty careful in the way that we started. We had everybody who was on the team go and do what I call document the current system. If you don't know what you're doing now and then you go try to replace it or improve it, you can have some real surprises down the road. So we had everybody go out and write down all the key things that they were doing and parts of the ERP and the eCommerce system that were really important to the functions, and then a wish list of things that they couldn't do or they wish they could do or they might be able to do better if they had these capabilities. And we kind of pulled those all together. In terms of any project management, you do need someone to lead it, and hopefully someone who has done this before and maybe made some mistakes and learned from them. In my case, I took that on because it's kind of the function that I sideline here during the regular work process. If somebody doesn't have one, if someone in that role that has had a successful experience, then I think, as you mentioned, it's important to get help, like you folks, and do so with an open mind. Let you guys do some discovery and documentation to help an organization make sure that they get all the bases covered.
John, how is it that you identified the ERP solutions that you chose to investigate as a team?
Well, it's pretty easy these days. There's a lot of literature, whether it's Gartner or the other review groups. You can get a top 20 list for 2020 in distribution or e-commerce, and then just use the tools that they give you as to the flexibility of the new features, the ability for growth, cloud-based. you kind of pay attention to these casually as you're in business, but when you really start to look at them, you say, okay, we identified 5 that everybody kind of agreed looked like they were capable enough, not overwhelming, something that fit our size right, and did some preliminary reviews and narrowed it down to 3. And of those 3, we must have had 60 Zoom meetings in the last 4 months, 5 months, to learn the different features. People help us with our discovery to try to get the right solution. There are third-party people that tie into the systems. So just working through that to try to do due diligence, and finally come up with something that we think is the best fit for our needs, our growth, our budget, because it's a big project. And I think even when you get to that decision, there's still a lot of work to do to make sure that things are going to work for you before you actually start the process of converting.
We had touched on the idea of how technology has changed since the last time you upgraded your ERP, and how you think this potentially could be the last ERP you guys ever go with. During that conversation, you hit on an important trend and an interesting point that impacts ERP and e-commerce. Can you touch on that?
Oh, absolutely. We're coming off of a mentality of the software systems where kind of like your Apple iPhone. Every 2 years, the provider comes out with a new version, and if you don't upgrade, you don't get the new features, and pretty soon you run out of support, so you're almost pressured into doing that. And now with the cloud capabilities to keep people kind of on the same systems, I'm seeing that a lot of the software suppliers have taken a different approach as to, all right, you're going to license the systems, but we're going to stay with you. We're not going to make you upgrade. We're going to give everybody the upgrade. And you can take the parts of it that you want and if you don't want. They're designing so that if you do need to make customizations, that it's done in a way that the customizations can follow along on the new upgrades, so that truly some of the sales pitches have been, this could be the last time you need to switch to a new platform, because we're going to move forward and add capabilities and give them to you on the way, so that you don't have to continue to make choices of spending more money to upgrade. One of the things we did talk about, and I think this is kind of interesting and fun, in making those wish lists and the documents of the existing system that our staff did, they were really, they wanted to make sure they got everything they needed. And then we had the first demo of what was available in, say, a modern software ERP platform. And I think the quote would be, we didn't know what we didn't know. Because when they saw what an individual could do themselves without talking to IT, without doing a modification, it made the wish list look pretty silly, because they hadn't even considered that they would be able to do this on their own, or get the customization, or download every page and every module from an Excel sheet and searches and the like. So that certainly helped the project energy, because now everybody's excited. They can't wait. They want to convert tomorrow because they see everything that's available. And what better way to take, get people engaged and on the teams.
Definitely. And I think that's so interesting. Both of your points there, that how technology has changed. I mean, certainly we've seen that in e-commerce platforms too, that, 5 years ago, there wasn't the technology available as strong, especially for custom needs that manufacturers and distributors need. In terms of meeting the business rules and requirements they have. Typically, you had to customize platforms to get them to do the things that you needed in a way that you couldn't use like a SaaS solution or a software service solution that's constantly upgraded. And now technology has changed, so those solutions are much more powerful today. And to your other point, John, that they've built so many more features in it than we might even think to ask for. So like being open to learn, there's so much to learn as a part of that process, which is what I think has really impressed me about the approach that your team has taken, is in putting those wish lists together and then reviewing those platforms, you're both looking at how to keep the things that are important to you, but also open to doing things in a new way. We've talked about this before, this idea of being willing to maybe do things differently in order to keep things as close to the system that you're moving to as possible, like to keep your costs lower. Can you talk about that, John? Because I know you've done that as a part of your ERP back in 2013. You had that same mindset then, and you keep that now.
Yeah, and again, that goes back to my years in the past when trying to keep clients happy. Everybody thinks they're unique. Everybody thinks they need something special, and many people do. But especially with modern technology and thought processes, there's a lot of good business practices built into the software that comes out now versus 5-10 years ago. When we had to upgrade in 2013 from a version 3 to a version 8, nobody really knew how to do that because they thought they had modified that version so much that they needed to before they could even work with it, try to add those mods back. It was a little backward thinking because they took off the graphic interface to get back to the green screen, which they were comfortable with, which really took me by surprise because I hadn't seen a green screen for 20 years. And all well intentioned, but just this is the way we've been doing things. And so I asked the guys who got here after a couple of weeks, well, we ever turned this version 8 on to see what it does? Well, why don't we do that? So we turned it on, and lo and behold, in the 20 years that we had been making our own modifications, that software had caught up and even had new things that we thought were pretty cool. So we made the tough decision. We're going to just do this vanilla. We're going to turn this on. We're going to get some training, which took some time because there were some new things. And we went vanilla with the promise that we would not do any modifications for at least the first 2 years. And we pretty well stuck to that. A few business processes changed. We lost a couple of things that didn't sync the business that everybody thought it would, and we gained some stuff that helped the business that we hadn't thought of. So that's really, I think, important to keep your organization under control and especially in a small organization, keep your costs down.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's such a great point. When organizations think about what can you do to control your costs, one of the things is really that mindset of like, could we as an organization think about doing things differently to be more in line with the capabilities of the software that's out there versus trying to recreate processes we have in the software that we're moving to. So yeah.
One of the other things now that we're discovering in this process, and we talked about this, when we did our last upgrade, the ERP system was over here, and of course the e-commerce platform had just kind of grown out of the grassroots, and we put products out there and people ordered stuff, and we took the information from the e-commerce platform, and we walked over to the ERP and we put it in and we shipped the orders. Maybe we went back to the e-commerce platform and updated that, but probably not. And now we're looking at this and we're saying, man, but these are all connected. We're integrated to our current platform. We can't probably upgrade one very easily without doing the other. That's a big job. That's kind of scary, but I can't imagine we can continue to think of those two major business functions and processes separate. And in fact, when we were looking for a new ERP, we looked at which ERPs had fairly easy or complete integrations to e-commerce platforms, and then we went the other way. We looked at the e-commerce platforms that would fit and integrate very easily and very smoothly with the ERPs. And that is basically what has helped us come down to a decision, because a lot of the top ERP systems and e-commerce systems do a lot and can work probably for almost anyone. But the big key for us is, I think, going to be one that very quickly and very easily, if that's possible, they'll be positive about this, works together, because we've got over 20% of our business on our e-com platform and we want more. And my goodness, the last 5-6 months have taught us that we need to be able to work remote. We have our customers access our information, and especially as our B2B customers get more used to using our e-commerce platform.
even prior to the solution reviews period that you were going through, when you came to us with the original documentation that you guys had put together, we were super impressed, because many times we have organizations that approach us and they don't take that approach. They kind of skip step A, and which is a really important step. Can you touch on that first step you took and the importance of it?
Sure. I mean, again, you got to have an understanding or a vision of where you want to go. Any project should have, come down and list your objectives and then try to figure out what you want as deliverables. But again, if you're not somebody who does this every day and is absolutely current in the industry and knows what's out there, you're probably shortchanging yourself. And so I think it's really important to as a client, come to people like Brilliance or other folks who are providers with an open mind, and be willing to learn things. I can't tell you how much our team has learned in the various demos of the like that we've seen, and it's not all related to the basic project. There's some other things that, boy, that was a great idea. Wish I would have thought of that. So yeah, people should keep an open mind. Those minds tend to slam shut pretty quickly when you're kind of in your own little bubble, in your own little world, dealing with your business, and then all of a sudden you pop out after a couple of years and you want to make a change. You better figure out what's out there.
Yeah. The idea of having an open mind and the fact that you orient yourself and your team around learning from what's out there, I think is really powerful. So like you have a very open mindset about thinking about how could we grow and how can we adapt, and I just think that's a great way to approach. From my perspective, organizations that are successful in digital commerce are constantly thinking about how they're trying new things, leveraging technology in new ways, and that kind of requires people approaching information with really a learning attitude, and so I think that's really great.
Well, thank you. And it's not me. I'm fortunate. My purpose in coming here with this family organization was kind of a move from a third generation to a fourth generation, and we have a really good team. And our new president is very forward-thinking, very accepting of ideas. So that probably makes it a little easier than if you're dealing with a group of senior folks who have been running the organization for the last 30 years and maybe aren't paying that as much attention to change. So we have a very tight management team that respects each other and to each other and basically solves problems a lot better than we used to. I'm a dinosaur.
You're not a dinosaur. So.
Just a minute ago, you had mentioned demos and looking at all the various e-commerce platforms and recognizing that there's probably a bunch of functionality out of the box with these e-commerce platforms that you guys wouldn't necessarily need right away. It's cool and interesting to see, but maybe it's something that you would use in the future. Can you talk about how you balance what your needs are today versus what you should be considering for the future?
Yeah, that's something that we noticed really quickly. The need to maybe match to the size that we are now, but still leave things open to growth. There are platforms out there that could handle tremendous amount of volume and capabilities and processes that, quite frankly, some of which we would never use. But we can still, as a company of our size, double or triple on a platform that maybe is a little simpler and a little easier to convert and to work with. So I think there's a trade-off. Get something that's powerful enough to take care of your needs now and well into the future. As I say, maybe the only one you need, but maybe either not use the features that are capable when you don't need them, or maybe you end up choosing the system just based on the fact that one has so many bells and whistles and is so broad and can cover so many aspects that you just can't get your arms around it in any sort of reasonable time with a company of 50 people. So that's gonna be part of the decision process too.
Yeah. Those are really important trade-offs to think through as a part of like planning for your growth and where you think you're going to be in the next 3 years, 5 years, and what platform makes the most sense to get you there. So we talked about a lot of different things in our conversation. If you were to boil it down, John, to like the top 2 things that you would recommend people consider when planning, what would they be?
Well, we've covered them. You get your team involved, and you keep an open mind as you're doing your evaluation.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is so important. Entrepreneurial operating system is a business management and strategic planning and execution framework. Gesswein and Brilliance both use the EOS framework, and I know you're a believer in EOS. And I wonder if you can speak to like the value that EOS, maybe it's not a question, but if you can just tell us about the value that's represented for you. And I guess and also in navigating, I see your organization as one that has done a really nice job of navigating. 2020 has been a challenge to every business I know. So like how has EOS helped Gesswein as an organization?
I got to attribute this again to our new president, 4th generation president, because he came across this concept or model in one of his organizational connections, and there's a lot of management philosophies and a lot of systems of the month and whatever, and this really I don't think is, and I think that's why there's been a lot of people successful. This EOS system is based on developing basic core values of what your company is, and those can be very different and surprising once you look at them. And then based on those core values, how you hold people accountable. It's a fairly structured format. It makes you work meetings in a very specific way so that they're productive and that they don't get monopolized, and that you end up making decisions and moving on in a very efficient way compared to meeting 2 or 3 times and then nobody really makes a decision at the end of the meeting. It also makes evaluating and holding your people accountable very easy because we have these core values. We have our strengths, and we have our niche, and we have our promise. And unlike the old annual evaluations that were very subjective and everybody wrote good things about people, these are almost yes or no questions. Did you do this or not? Or do you need to improve? And so it really is, and I know you folks use it too, been using it longer than we have. We're sold on it, and we're coming into our first year of using it, so we're really still going to get the benefit from it. So I would highly recommend it. It's written up a book called Traction. I called it kind of once like good to great on steroids, with a way to do it, not just what to do, but how to do it.
That's a great way to describe it. Not just what to do, but how to do it. And I agree, John. I think it creates clarity, and just makes and helps to, like, before EOS, I felt like there were things I had in my head, but I didn't necessarily that they weren't shared for us as a team. And so I feel like it really helped us to create a greater clarity as an organization and get us all on the same page about what we're trying to do together and help us to team together more effectively. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think echoing what John said, getting things done. I think ever since we implemented the EOS system, we've accomplished way more than we were prior to the other system we were using to organize ourselves. So it's very, very interesting. Well, thank you, Mr. Parsh, for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time, young man. This was an excellent session.
We value your team and your help, and I'm sure you will be of value as we get into this project even deeper. So, thank you, and best wishes to your team too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, everybody. Take care.